All right. Sheila, I'm so
Yeah.
excited to be here with you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Jay Walker with Blind Dates. I'm here with my beautiful guest, Miss Sheila Styron. How are you doing today, Sheila?
I am doing great. It's not too cold. It's not too wet.
Oh, it's beautiful outside right now.
Beautiful today.
It's kind of terrifying me though because it is 70 degrees when it's in February. So, eh, we'll be fine. Everything's fine. We'll be okay. So Sheila, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your career? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? What do you do?
Well, it's been an interesting ride. When I went to college, I was a music major at UCLA, and I worked in the music field in Los Angeles for many years. And then when I got close to middle age, my life curve started intersecting with becoming more involved in politics, advocacy, legislation. I'd always wanted to do something political and I'd always wanted to help people. So I really began doing things like working on guide dog legislation and helping to write legislation and uh, kind of getting to know that aspect of life a little bit more rather than just taking what came around, trying to give. And so then as time went on, I was working a little less in music and working more and more in the disabilities field, doing a lot of disabilities training and getting involved in good causes. I started working a lot with American Council of the Blind and was president of Guide Dog Users Incorporated for a couple of terms. Um, um, when I'm making presentations to people, I'll often say something like, the worst part about being blind is you don't get to drive, but the best part is you get to take your guide dog with you, have a guide dog.
Mm-hmm.
So, because that is so much a part of my identity, um, I've been very involved in all of the work with guide dogs. And one of my kind of proudest moments is getting to work through Guide Dog Users Inc. In a coalition with other organizations and got to work with the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice to revamp the service animal definition earlier around. Well, we actually started working on it like around 2000, 2001, and the ADA was updated, including this definition finally around 2008, kind of came out in 2009. So when you're working in that governmental realm, it's very slow going.
Yeah, you gotta have some patience.
You have to have a lot of patience for that stuff. But we got her done.
So you
And then
are,
after that, then I went to work at a Center for Independent Living and all of that volunteering and growing and learning got me a job as a public policy specialist. And I was doing a lot of work on the state and local level and still some stuff nationally. But, and in
just some
Kansas
stuff
City,
nationally.
just, little stuff after the changing the guide dog definition, the surface
Hmm.
animal definition, uh, written a lot of requests and begged for a lot of favors nationally, but um, that was sort of the biggest project that I was really involved in on a federal level. One of the things I'm proud of in local advocacy here in Kansas City is that I worked really hard and not just single advocacy, but did a lot of the heavy lifting, getting a lot of the accessible pedestrian signals we have here in town. Say a gentleman who I used to work with, Patrick Palmer, who is also blind. He kind of got the ball rolling, and then I jumped in and we gathered some other advocates about us and worked with the city and got a lot of a lot of changes in terms of getting those apps in, and we got the city to agree early on before a lot of other local jurisdictions that anytime an app wore out and they needed to replace it, um, we wanted it to be accessible, and anytime new ones are put in major areas, they need to be accessible. So that makes me feel good. There's a corner near my house where one is broken. So I just wrote an email to one of the traffic engineers and said, please come fix this. So the work never ends, really. And I was chairing ACB's transportation committee until a couple of years ago. And then I passed that along, and it's been passed along a couple of times, but I still serve on that committee. And I also work on the American Council of the Blind's Advocacy Services Committee, their National Advocacy Committee, and then I'm serving on the Guide Dog Users Advocacy Committee. So I haven't totally gotten away from advocacy in my work right now. Well, let's see, I started out as a public policy specialist at the Whole Person, and then I told them I was noticing that we just don't do enough for people who are blind and low vision in the Kansas City area. So I got them to create a position where all I did was work to benefit people who are blind and low vision
Oh,
and,
that's so
and
cool.
all places on the spectrum. And part of it would be to help people, a little bit with learning their computers, a little bit with their iPhones. And sort of the fun part was I organized a lot of activities to get people involved. You know, tandem bike riding, taught a stretch class, at a support group, people bowling, planned picnics, all kinds of
The
activities,
rock
different
climbing.
tours. And now I'm at a point now where I'm working as a private contractor, just training people with assistive technology, mostly JAWS, a little bit voiceover on the Mac and iPhone stuff. So that's sort of a nutshell. I'm a sports fanatic. Well, not so much watching sports, but I like to do things. I like to walk and run, and there's a great adaptive fitness program here in Kansas City called Adaptive Athletes in Motion, and it's really proven to be a great opportunity for somebody who's blind to go and work out and have the help that I need. Really, what I need is for someone to find my weights, set up my workstation so that I can hop from my bike and find the mat and go over to where I need to do the ring rows. And so this program has just been a godsend because I can't really participate in mainstream classes like that without extra help. So that's really something that I enjoy. And I
Just
play
out,
the
just out of
ukulele.
curiosity, how much can you lift?
How much what?
How much can you lift? Like, can you bench press or do
Oh,
anything like that?
lift. Oh, well, I've been doing it for about a year and a half, and I can lift from the ground up. I can lift about 130. I can probably
What?
lift more, but I know I can lift like 130. When it comes to lifting over my head, I'm much wimpier, like about half that much, like 65 or 70. I don't bench press very much, but
I feel like after saying that, it's very important to tell the world like how old you are.
oh,
Like,
well, I have been on the planet for a while. I'm very young for my age, and I do run. Like I ran 2 miles last week, and I do 10 Ks, and I turned 70 last August.
isn't that crazy? That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. I am.
That's
I am.
amazing.
I'm an old thing. I'm very well preserved, and
Nice
I
and
really
refrigerated.
I'm very well preserved. I have a youthful attitude, but it's really true. Use it or lose it. You got to keep
Hmm.
moving.
So what is the range of your
And
vision?
I'm totally blind
You are
and
totally
have always
blind.
been.
You were born
Yes.
blind?
Yes. I had a little bit of light and dark and shadow perception when I was very small, but by the time I was a teenager, it was just total, total nothing.
And what
And I
exactly?
always, when I address groups, I tell them, it's really a very small percentage of people that are actually truly, totally blind like me.
Hmm.
So I would say, you guys are really lucky because you're getting the real deal here. The real deal.
That's what I tell people too. Like, guess what? I'm rare.
You too?
So
Yeah,
what
but I've been that
exactly is
way
your
longer than you.
what is your diagnosis?
Um, that's kind of crazy. When I was little and I went to the doctor, I didn't like to talk about it, and it made me cry, and I never really wanted to talk about it. And I heard my mother say that I had an undeveloped retina and optic nerve, but I've hardly even been to an eye doctor since I was an adult. And um, because they don't work, but they don't hurt or anything, and I don't
Hmm.
take any medication, and it's really, they're just there, the old eyeballs. And I don't, so I don't know. This is embarrassing, but I don't even know big fancy grown up adult words for my eye condition. I never have to write it down anywhere, and I know when I'm meeting people and working with people and doing training for people in the process of vision loss, they just love to tell me about their eye conditions, what happened to them and when and how. And like, I'm like, I don't care about that. No, I mean, I don't know. It's just never been a part. But I do keep telling myself, Sheila, you should go to an eye doctor and you should, get like an official big multi-syllable word diagnosis for your
Make yourself feel
eyes.
official,
So
part of the
I
club.
may be the only adult who doesn't know why they're blind, but
You know what?
but
That's
my
probably
mom used
really
to say it was
refreshing
an
though.
undeveloped optic nerve and retina. And I had an uncle, my grandmother on my father's side, her brother was blind and probably had the same thing.
Hmm. It's probably really refreshing. Like in a way, it's probably pretty refreshing not to like be kind of held down by like a category or a diagnosis or anything like that. You're just like, "Yep, I am. I just am."
I am, always have been, always will be. That's um I don't want to offend anybody, but one of the there's really a wonderful group, foundation fighting blindness, all around retinitis pigmentosa, RP, and they talk about the cure all the time and working for the cure, working for the cure. Well, in my life and my experience, it's the focus is more about making the world work better for us and figuring out how we can um, compensate and gain the life skills and find the right technology and learn to use the right technology to make our lives the best they can be, rather than holding out a lot of hope for something that may not happen in
Hmm.
my lifetime, right? So,
Yeah. I definitely understand that. I hear it all the time like, "Oh, you'll get your sight back one day." Like, "Oh," and I'm like, we really should stop focusing on how being blind is the worst case scenario and instead, maybe look into seeing how it's
like it.
not that huge?
Well, I like to picture, I guess it was Star Trek Second Generation, Geordi. He had the visor and he was blind, but his technology was so good that he could do absolutely everything,
Mhm.
with his visor and his whatever his implants were, whatever he had. And I, that when I think about, things being better, I think about technology like that. It's maybe there will come a time, some where they can absolutely cure any eye condition. But for sure, technology is growing by leaps and bounds. And I don't know if you have talked about on your program, Be My Eyes is this great app. It used to be just a great app where volunteers assisted you answering
Mm,
questions when you called in um, on a video kind of an app. And then they started adding in all of these specialized programs and services with Microsoft and all these other companies so that you can get special assistance in,
yeah.
completing tasks, and they'll help people with their what do you call it, job resumes. And but now they've got this picture taking artificial intelligence situation going on. And I'm telling you, those pictures that they take are pretty detailed,
Oh, it's
and
amazing.
it's really quite amazing. And I had a broken oven for 4 years, and I finally just broke down and bought a new oven. And I knew this was going to happen. And of course, touch screen on the oven is too sensitive, and you even breathe on it, it starts beeping and jumping all over the
Yep.
place. Well, I figured out this kind of nifty way that I can work it. I like take like the tip of a cocktail straw, and I place it like I can hit the start button without causing havoc. But then if I want to change, it sort of comes up at 350 automatically on the oven. And if I want to change it, I take the tip of a cocktail straw and put it kind of in the middle of the numbers. And then I'm able to move my hand over the display and like press 450, and then I can go and press the start button. And so I figured out how to do that, but I still, was not secure about whether it really was going to 450. And I swear that that app literally tells you, huh,
Huh. All right.
oh, you're still there. Okay. Yeah, I heard the recording stop.
Yeah, let me start it again. Oh, it's still
Well, you
recording.
should take a picture with Be My Eyes and see what the hell's going
Yeah,
on.
dude. Well, okay, so viewers don't know this, you know this. My campus actually got hacked, and like a big cybersecurity thing is going on right now, and so we don't have any Wi-Fi or any access to any of our stuff all over campus.
A couple of months ago, I heard this great interview with Jane Fonda and, oh God, what's her name? Um, and it was a comedian, and they had a podcast lapse, and the host just kept running the podcast when she lost Jane, and she was sitting there swearing, and it was just all part of the show. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I wish I would have kept recording when the video went out because that was me.
Well, I kept talking for a while because I thought, well, maybe, maybe something's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to listen
So
to the recording and see where it actually cut out. But
see what you, yeah.
it's
Well,
like,
no, we
yeah,
heard it say the recording stopped, but then we were still connected for a while. And then we fell apart.
shit
We kind of
happens.
fell apart in stages, first the recording and then the Zoom. I don't know about the podcast. What's the difference between a podcast and a plain old recording?
Um, I mean a
I'm
podcast is
sure your
posted.
listeners want to know.
I mean a podcast is posted. I'm pretty sure just a plain old recording is just a plain old recording. I don't do anything else.
Okay,
I'm just
so
on Zoom.
so if you don't post it, it's just a recording.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, nothing magical.
No, nothing crazy.
Then you should be able to just connect part one and part two and
Yeah, it'll be
make a
fine.
little
We'll figure
speech.
it out. Dylan, figure it out. He'll do it.
Do you have a partner?
I do. His name is Dylan.
Yeah. So what now?
All right, so moving on. Um, so you've been visually impaired your entire life. So how has that affected your motivation? How has it kind of tampered your motivation or has it made you stronger?
Um, well, I often wonder, often think um, that I wonder if I just have the personality that I would have been an advocate, whether I had been blind or not, because I've spent my whole life fixing things and rescuing people and standing up for causes. But I wonder, how much of that I would have, channeled, how much of my energy I would have channeled that way had I not been blind. I don't know. It's interesting to think about, who you are and what you would be, and it is really interesting. And I don't know. I should probably have more therapy, and I could figure out more of how much my blindness has affected who I am and what I am. Um, it is really kind of interesting to think about. Something just flitted through my mind and then it flitted on out the other side. But I definitely know that that I probably am stronger than I would have been because to be average, you have to try harder, work harder. you know, a lot of people, they may have trouble with an app or with something going on their computer, but people like you and I, we have to work harder. We have to be really patient and persistent and stubborn um and I may have carried that to an extreme because I'll just if something isn't working, I'll just pound away at it and really keep trying hard till I get it to do what I need it to do, or I practically die trying. And one of my girlfriends a couple of months ago said, you need to, when you're doing something hard that isn't working, you should just set an alarm and only let yourself do it for an hour. And it is true that I have students that, some of them don't try hard enough. I can tell they get frustrated and they want to give up. So, you know, some of it must just be my natural personality that bullheaded and stubborn and that I don't, you know, like to give up. I
Well,
don't know.
I mean, that's a good
What
trait to
about
have at
you?
least. I'm
Do
definitely
you think
very,
your basic personality has changed since you lost your vision?
I think it
Or
has
do you think you're still,
shifted in a way. Like I feel like I'm still the same, like I still have the same ambition, the same motivations, the same values, that kind of thing, but I feel like it's just kind of shifted in the way that I do it and like where I get my motivation from and what I'm actually like motivated to do, if that makes sense.
well, yeah, what you're doing has got to be really different, you know? Um, but yeah, so I mean, and I work with a lot of people who are older, and I don't think, their personalities don't really change, but what they're made of comes out. There are people, who really grab life by the horns, no matter what stage they are at life, if they lose vision. And then I think there are people who are born blind who can't find their way out of a paper bag, who basically, they would be that same way if they were sighted, if they weren't blind.
Mm-hmm.
I think, but it would be really interesting to have some real um, actual scientific statistics on how lifelong or lifelong disability or attained disability at a certain part in life really affects your personality. And I mean, there are certain things, like mobility and just things that are easier or harder to do. It'll draw people into categories. Like today at the bowling alley, I figured out that there was a shortcut down to where bowl. And if I climbed over this railing and went down this ramp, I could get down to the bowling alley easier. But I know a lot of people who can't see wouldn't have figured out how to do that or wouldn't have wanted to climb over the little wall. So I think, we're all unique, blind or not, acquired disability or from birth disability. We'll have our personalities. But beyond that, it's kind of hard to quantify what would be what would be the deal. I know that a long time ago, a few years ago, I took a career test, and because I was kind of trying to do something different. And it said that I was very analytical, and it asked me all these questions. And then, it it said, "Here is your perfect career." And I just bet you couldn't guess what my perfect career was.
Um,
just just a wild guess.
just a wild guess. Okay.
Let's
Okay.
just say that
Surfer,
this test did
artist.
not take into account that I'm blind. So let me give you that as a clue.
Uh, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the things that you can't do while you're blind, and you pretty much have defied all laws. So I'm trying to figure out what is a crazy career that you wouldn't be able to do.
Well,
Maybe a
it said
pilot?
that I would make a great photographer. Out of hours and hours of testing, it said, and then I paid money for this, that I should be a
Oh,
photographer.
you should get your money back.
So I mean, I can take pictures some if I think about it, and I try to envision like a thread from where I want the picture to be back to where the phone is, and I'll back up, or I'll hold the phone and I'll make a line between the object and my phone with my fingers. I just try to do all these things to picture but you can get the angle wrong. There's so many things you can get wrong. But yeah, it's I should be a photographer. Go figure.
That's so funny.
So who knows what I would have done?
Well, what you did do is become the
Was there
first
anything?
ADA, you became the first blind ADA consultant literally ever. Uh, how,
Well, I became the first person who is totally blind to pass this, to get this certification. I kind of knew people who had that job, but they didn't take that certification program. Now, I took the certification program and never ended up finding a job in the field, but I was the first person who was qualified to do that job.
which is still really cool.
Look at it.
Why do you think you were the
Yeah,
first
so
person to
it's on
get the
my
certification?
resume, and yeah,
Why
I do
why were you
throw
the
that
first
out
person to get the certification? Like,
there.
why wasn't there other blind people before you to get that certification?
Sorry about that. Usually when I put my hand over my watch, it stops immediately. Stop now. So I missed your last question, but
Um, why did it take so long for there to be a blind consultant? Like, why did it take so long for someone to take that certification and be blind?
um, because they didn't invent the degree until a couple of years before I took it. I was the 70 somethingth person in the country. It was like they passed the ADA in 1990. And as time went on, they discovered that nobody knew about the ADA, and nobody was assisting organizations and entities and businesses with compliance. Somebody needed to tell people how to do it. So then, they figured out and they decided, okay, every place of employment with, over 50 employees needs to have somebody, and usually just be somebody who it was maybe just one of their job duties, and it would get thrown at them. Okay, you need to figure out, so we don't get in trouble, how we can be more ADA compliant and more helpful to our, disabled employees, et cetera, or better serve the public. So then the University of Missouri at Columbia in consort with various ADA groups, um, came up with this certification program. And I was number 70 something in the country to get it. It was very brand new. And I just asked them, I said, have any other blind people done this? And he looked at the list and he goes, no, you're the first one. So it wasn't like a Guinness Book of Records. I was just the first one.
I don't know. I still think it's
And
cool.
now there's
New button. Leave.
All right.
New button. New button. Needed
And
information
we're
button.
back.
you're back. Okay. So we aren't podcasting unless we are recording, because I just learned that unless you're broadcasting, you're not podcasting.
It is still recording. We're
Yes.
still good. Oh
Okay.
my
Good,
gosh.
good.
Um,
Yeah, technical challenges. Yeah, it's working. There it is.
um.
Don't say any bad words.
Oh, I already did. Where was I at?
So,
Where were we talking about? I don't remember. ADA.
yeah, I was just saying, that not very many people had done that. And I guess they, often when they want people to take on something as a career path, they come up with a degree or a license and to have some kind of quality control. Boy, if things are breaking, things are ringing.
It happens to the best of us.
Oh, I know. I could mute my phone. There. Push that little button down, so at least now that won't ring if it happens again. Well, at least it's kind of a nice chimey little ring. It's not like a hideous foghorn. Yeah, so at my last job, whenever anybody had ADA questions, they would come to me. And I thought about getting a job just exclusively doing that, but I never really tried very hard, never did that. So, but I suppose it's still something that I can do. And I do help educate people when there is a need, amongst other training that I do, or when people have questions. I truly am a service animal expert.
Yes,
I
you
know
are.
everything there is to know. I know all about the service animals and all about the laws and
And
everything about all of
speaking
that.
of service animals, you changed the definition of service animal like legally. What was the original definition
Well,
and how did it how
yeah.
did the change impact the community?
Well, a service animal is now been narrowed to dog, and it says this was something I had something to do with too, and I wonder if it'll go away in the next iteration. But miniature horses, if a business can manage to include them without it representing a fundamental alteration to the way they do business, miniature horses can be included. But otherwise, they are now just inclusive of the species dog. And a service animal is an animal that has been trained to perform tasks that mitigate the effects of someone's disability. The dog actually has to be trained to do something. And it support animals or emotional support animals, may bring you comfort and may make you feel really good. And nobody disputes that. I certainly don't. But the line between an emotional support animal and a service animal is whether or not it has been trained to do something, perform a task that helps mitigate those disability effects. And then, we have pets, and we have, then there are other animals that are protected under the law a little bit, like, you know, police dogs. They're not trained to help uh, people with disabilities, but they can fly with, their um, handlers and are afforded certain privileges. And then there are animals that are trained to provide support to others, therapy dogs, but their handlers don't have to be disabled, but they have to go to school together, and the dog has to be trained to obey, and behave appropriately in clinical settings and schools, hospitals, nursing homes. And those animals can go places where pets can't go to provide, therapeutic assistance. So it's all kind of confusing. And the other thing that's confusing about the whole service animal conundrum is that we have sort of three layers of strict, what can I say, strictness. Um, DOJ, the Department of Justice, um, regulates service animals, and they have to be service animals, and they, are allowed in, have to do with the premises of businesses and publicly funded institutions like schools and hospitals. And service animals have to be permitted except where there is some sort of an extenuating circumstance, like maybe in a real serious, like, burn ward in a hospital, you wouldn't be able to bring a service animal because of risk of infection. But if you just want to go visit your sister in the hospital, you should be able to take your service animal. There are places like certain sections of a zoo, maybe. In zoos, there are no set rules, but zoos set different rules so that maybe a zoo doesn't want you to bring your service animal in by the lions and the tigers because it's going to be very disturbing. But there are plenty of other places where they don't mind if you go. So you do have to check on certain things. And
Interesting. I didn't even
then
think
there
about
are all the things regulated by the Department of Transportation, and that's, the airlines, buses, trains, and that's sort of another different set of rules. And then the third, kind of the most casual environment, is housing. And housing has the most animal favorable set of regulations. And if a person wants an emotional support animal in that environment, that's pretty much been protected and stood up for under the law. So it's really confusing for a lot of people with animals because they don't, they really don't know which rules apply where, and it's pretty confusing for people. And so it also makes it easy for people to intentionally or unintentionally perpetrate service animal fraud because, it's pretty hard. The businesses don't really know the rules, and they don't want to kick somebody out and make a mistake and get sued. And but in all situations, animals are supposed to be well behaved and under the control of their person, their handler. So even though I have a real guide dog, if my guide dog misbehaves, I can legitimately be asked to leave a business. However, they really have to let me back in to do the service. They can only ask, I mean, to enjoy the service. They only can ask that I leave the dog out. And if it's like a first offense, they can't permanently bar the animal. But you can be asked to leave and maybe try it again another time. So the laws are pretty complicated, and it's pretty easy to get away with fraud, and it's pretty confusing and mystifying for business owners to know, what goes.
Yeah.
and when they really to be responsible.
So why do you advocate so heavily for service animals and for guide dogs specifically?
Because it's a super important part, of my life personally, and I want it to work well for other people. I know that there are a lot of people who face challenging situations, and for instance, many people who have guide dogs have rideshare refusals, Uber and Lyft vehicles that drive by and leave them in the dust, and they see a dog and they drive by, and they don't even talk to them, or some come up and talk and they say, no dog, no dogs in my car. And and if I don't get that ride, then I have to get another ride and I have to file a complaint, and I should file a complaint with the Department of Justice and with the rideshare. You know, it's it's hard to deal with all this and to put up with it. So part of why I advocate so hard is because I've been doing this my whole life, and it's a pain, but I can do it without falling apart. I don't fall apart and cry, and I don't, it doesn't kill me. It doesn't cause me to have a nervous breakdown, but it does other people. The guide dog schools have recently been conducting research. I know Guide Dogs for the Blind and American Foundation for the Blind have, you know, got some research up online showing that there are lots of people who will maybe not get a second or a third guide dog because of all the trouble with this rideshare situation. And there are people who say, well, I thought about getting a dog, but I've heard it's so much trouble with the ride shares that I just don't want to put myself in that position. So I try really hard when I'm in, a ride share situation. If they stop and talk, I really try hard to force them to take me. And when I'm in the car, I try to be really nice. My dog lays on the floor. I don't let it get up on the seat. I've trained all my dogs to back out of vehicles backwards so they don't even put their paws on the seat, so that I'm trying to help make a really good impression so that maybe the driver will be nice to the next person they are assigned. Um, this hasn't happened to me in years and years, but restaurants can be a problem and used to be more of a problem. And I would fight and fight for the right to stay. And after I got to stay, I might be shaking. I'd be so upset, but I was going to stay. I was going to eat that meal. I was going to be a good customer and leave a nice tip, even though they didn't deserve it, because it's just my nature to want to make it better for the next person that comes along. So that's, I guess, why I do it. Because
Hmm.
it's not just all about me, it's about the people who come after me.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of hard for, people to remember sometimes, especially when they're in those situations where it's important to advocate. It's hard to remember too, even though this might not affect me right now, it could affect the next person and the next 2 dozen people and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. And I know that there are some people, and I try to coach people to, you know, to be brave and to take deep breaths and to learn to advocate and to stick up for yourself and other people. And but some people get so upset. I've talked to a few people who have moved, like in the DC area. They moved to the suburbs because they have so many rideshare refusals in DC. Um, or moved in with their parents so their parents could give them a ride, instead of them having to call an Uber to go to work. Um, that's just so sad, but my response is to kick and scream and swear and fight it, but some people, that's not their nature. It's
Mhm.
really difficult for them to stand up to that kind of emotional abuse.
So what is your advice
So,
for people regarding advocacy?
well, I say always start by being nice. Start stating your needs or what the situation is with a smile on your face, and start locally, and don't pitch a huge fit on step one. And situations occur where, well, it's not enough to talk to the person on the floor of the store. Maybe you need to go to the manager. And maybe if that doesn't work, then maybe you need to write to corporate headquarters. And then maybe if that doesn't work, then you go to your congressman. So I think it's really important to start small. And even when you're talking to the first person, try to get your job done still with something in your back pocket so that if it's necessary to escalate to a higher level, then you'll have more ammunition, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So that's the main thing, is not to, empty your gun on the first round, I don't, not a very good analogy ever in any situation to talk about a gun, but you do want to have, but you do want to have ammunition. You want to have
Verbal
more to
ammunition.
offer, and maybe consider, how the language you use. You're going to,
Mm-hmm.
as you climb the ladder, you're going to get more formal and more legal. And then, speaking of that, you may need to call in experts, find people who know more than you do, find people who have more clout than you do to help you um, state your case. You might need a letter from an attorney, that might do the trick. So, and learning applicable laws. If it's a ride share situation, know what it is. Know to tell the driver that, look, I know that you can't do this job without having agreed, to transport people with service animals, and that it is against the law. You need to know the law. You don't you just can't have say this is mean and I want to ride.
Yeah.
You really need to educate yourself and know what you're talking about in the various applicable situations. Something else that's happened with ride shares that makes it really more confusing is that they've got this new ride that they're offering called Uber Pet, and it costs a little more than Uber X, and people with pets can take Ubers. It's a special category. So now, my last rideshare refusal, I was coming home from the gym, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the guy was just saying, no, you need to take Uber Pet. And I'm saying, this is not a pet, it's a service animal. So, he didn't want to take me, and he was either using that as an excuse, or he may legitimately think he can tell me that. I don't know. But yeah, but that was the last situation. So there are just always these um, situations. And I talk to groups of people and try to educate the public whenever I can. I know sometimes it's tiring, but I always try to be as friendly to people in public as possible, and try to educate them about guide dogs and whatever the situation is. Or
Mm-hmm.
you know, don't don't ask my friend what I would like to drink. I can talk. Ask me.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
those kinds of things. I don't have a cognitive impairment. At least I don't think I do. It's just my eyes. So I mean, if you once you have a disability, when I'm doing training for people who with newly acquired disabilities, and I'm teaching them a little bit about the lay of the land and the legislation, the applicable legislation, I sort of tell people it may be comfortable for you, or it may be uncomfortable for you, depending on your personality. But unfortunately, when you have a disability, you have to, at a certain level, be an advocate. It's just required.
Mm-hmm.
You can't not do any. You may choose to do more or less, but you can't not do any. This won't work. Otherwise, you will never have your needs met.
Never.
Never. Right. So yeah, I even go talk to, I'm going to go talk to some preschoolers in a couple of weeks, because a friend of mine got a job as a preschool teacher, and so she wants me to come, of course, and talk about disabilities and show the dog. And when I have a group like that, I remember the first time somebody asked me, I said, what am I going to talk to 4-year-olds about? But it's about being there, exposing them to a real person with a disability, raising their comfort level, being around somebody with a disability, um, allowing them to ask questions and not put up an artificial barrier of distance between themselves and a person with a disability, because we do face those social barriers. And then at the end of the class, I will have them all line up one by one and have them ask, may I please pet your dog? And I, yes, and thank you for asking. They'll all get to pet the dog and everyone will be happy. I'll just demonstrate with the teacher that sometimes busy working and I can't let the dog be petted because he's working. He's keeping me safe. Getting ready to cross the street, you can have pet accident. So I do that part with the teacher, and then I let all pet the dogs, and they're so cute. So cute. And I can pet the dog.
We do love kids.
So that's
Kids
what
are
I
kids are
do.
interesting. Well, Sheila, it has been fantastic being with you. Our hour is up. All of this
Yes,
information is so, so valuable. Thank you so much
well,
for
I'm
being a part of the cast. We appreciate it.
I'm very happy to be here, and if you need me or anybody does, you know where to find me.
Do you have any social media or anything you'd like to boost?
Oh, I mean, no, I don't. I don't really. I'm on a few social media platforms, but I don't do anything special there. So I don't have a web page or a particular thing. I just have like email and a cell phone, and you're free to pass those out. It's fine. Um, yeah, but no, I don't have. Once in a blue moon, I'll tweet. I'll comment on
She's
other
in the
people's.
Twitter sphere.
Yeah, I don't have a real strong presence.
And that is okay. Well,
But
everybody,
I am happy to be here.
if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, feel free to email us at blinddatesjw@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at Blind Dates with Jay Walker. The with is a W with a slash because I am too lazy to write out the word. You can feel free to find me on Instagram at the_real_J_Walker. That is JJAY. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been my beautiful guest, Miss Sheila Styron, and this has been Blind Dates. All right, and I will stop the recording. Maybe.
Okay, leave meeting button.